Amazing, Chris. Also amazing.
Yeah, Chris, amazing. So I'm totally honoured to be here and to get this panel up here, and especially Chris, after watching this a few times now, I'm seeing different bits in it, and I think it's quite moving, and it opens up a lot of questions that don't want to be asked and don't want to be answered even more. And thank you everyone for being here to be part of this and to help progress and acknowledge that these things are going on, especially within skateboarding and within men's mental health and within society in a whole. So yeah, I mean, it's going to be really good to get points of view, especially from Chris and Adam and Alex, and Liz is going to join us up here as well. So yeah, if you want to come up, let's start having a chat. Furthest away from me, right? I'm coming to get you. Swap you. So I think best everybody introduces themselves first and sort of tells us a little bit about themselves, whether it to be within skateboarding or within mental health or whatever, and tell us a little bit about why you're here.
You're looking at me. Do you want me to start?
Yeah, start that way, I guess.
All right. My name's Alex Irvine. I'm a skateboard photographer of about 20 years and recently undertaken a psychology degree, and now I'm pursuing a career in, if you can call it a career, more education, but in psychological research. And that's about it. I also, just quickly, I also am a listening volunteer at a suicide support charity in Pimlico called The Listening Place. Just to get this out there before we get going, if you are feeling suicidal, there is support out there. The charity is completely non-judgmental. We want to hear from you, so just putting that out there. Sorry.
Hi, everybody. I'm Liz Harte. I'm a clinical psychologist. So I'm just here to share what I can in terms of my knowledge, and yeah, happy to take any questions and to support this amazing foundation and the work that you saw today.
Hi, I'm Adam Mondon. I was involved in skateboarding for about 10, 20 years. Working probably. Is this better? Is this better? Yeah. I'll start again. I'm Adam Mondon, and yeah, I've been working in skateboarding for the last 20 odd years. Not so much recently. I'm focusing on training to be a psychotherapeutic counsellor. So this has led me here today to skateboarding and mental health come together, and I look forward to this conversation. Cheers.
Hello. Thanks for coming. I really appreciate you all coming, and obviously for much more than my little bit. Obviously, a lot of you will know I've been on a journey. So I'm trying to hold it together. A lot of you know I've been on a journey, and a big part of that, and most of it, was getting to a point where I can use my story, whatever it is, to encourage other people to talk. Apart from that, you know, I ride skateboards and stuff like that. So, but you know, the main thing is I'm here because I want to encourage other people, maybe with bigger stories than mine, to be able to talk to their friends. Maybe not so publicly as I do, because you know, we don't all want to spill our guts on the internet, but if I exaggerate it maybe through my story, then in our smaller groups, we'll feel better about talking to each other, you know. So excuse seeing a lot of me around, but it's for a good cause, you know, so I hope. Okay, but thanks for, and everybody who's watching as well, so, okay.
Well, it seems as good a place as anywhere to start with you, Chris. Sorry.
Okay.
But I think it's very brave for you to be sat up here. And you mentioned earlier that you haven't watched the film yet in that order or in that edit. Having sat and watched that back to put you on the spot, have you got any different feelings about what you'd started filming and how the end picture looks?
Yeah, nobody was told me about all that dodgy footage from when I was 16 with a bad haircut. But so I'd seen a rough edit of it, you know, and it needed punctuation. Obviously, it was just to kind of get a feel for it. But that you know, that I think that it's a little bit emotional, I think, that, you know, and I can't help that. I'm very much on the surface as a person. It all just comes out. So hopefully that benefits. But yeah, I think it tells a story, and I think yeah, it does what it's supposed to do, I think. I think we can share. It's a video that I would share to other people and say, hey, look, here's an example of some dude who's, you know, been through some stuff and is still here, and yeah, you can get through you know, it might be a real long tunnel and you might never see light at it, but it comes eventually, you know. You just got to be really stubborn and talk to people, find good people, you know. Sorry, I'm rambling a little.
But that's something that I've been speaking about in different various groups, and today as well with Alex and Adam before you came along prior, and talking about how skateboarders are stubborn because that's how you get good at skateboarding. You don't give up. Do you find that has affected you with your progression of getting to where you are now from where you were? You know, you're saying you've got to be stubborn, but is that something you feel that you've brought from skateboarding, or is it something else?
Yeah, I definitely think that perseverance of, you know, like most of us who skate here have kicked our boards around in a car park on our own or with a bunch of guys wearing 3 coats in the freezing cold. We've all persevered through that and know how much work goes into making something happen, you know. So I don't like to give up on things generally, you know. I've given up on 1 or 2 tricks in skateboarding, and some people know about that, but so yeah, I think that's definitely come through into this. A lot of, you know, there have been times when I've felt like giving up, you know, and then there've been reasons to keep going as well. I found reasons, you know, and they haven't always been obvious reasons as well. Sometimes I had to look for those reasons and reason the reasons out to, you know, is this worth it in the balance sheet of life, you know. But yeah, that stubbornness, that perseverance as a skateboarder, I think that's helped a lot, you know. But it is stubbornness. It feels like stubbornness mainly. So.
Do you think, I mean, you mentioned in the edit, you talked about the need to talk, need to open up. And I think that's something that stubbornness can actually hinder a little bit as well. Not to downplay any of the kind of effort that goes into skateboarding and the kind of, you know, it requires that approach. I think there's also an argument for openness within skateboarding that's maybe not discussed. We talk about the emotions that are shown in skateboarding are joy, determination, you know, if that's an emotion, and pain, you know, and anger.
Yeah.
There isn't a space for sadness, and there isn't a space for kind of personal development. And those kind of stories are kind of, you know, they're hammed up a little bit. They're kind of sold to you like this could be you, you know, you could have the dream. It's not necessarily like that. There are incremental changes in life, and talking, communication is kind of, I feel, is key to kind of change in that way. You know, if it's a negative thing you're in, talking about it it's like a crack in the door, you know. You can open from there.
Yeah, definitely. Being not worried or feeling like you can talk about stuff without feeling, you know, judged too much. We were talking a little earlier about being in a position in skateboarding where you have a career, and a lot of people had careers in skateboarding, and there's probably, you know, quite a big factor of being like, hey, if I tell someone I don't feel I'm very good, I'm not going to get invited on this skate trip, and that's going to affect my career. Or if someone thinks I'm going to have a breakdown on this trip, or I'm not going to get invited. And I think people hide stuff because of that. And obviously the point I'm at in my career is I've got nothing to lose. I'm an old man who's like clinging on by the skin of his teeth to skateboarding because it's my passion. But it's a shame that that I feel good and confident about talking about it now because I've got nothing to lose. You know, I mean, it's a shame that I feel better, you know, that I feel better about talking about it because I'm in this position. And what I'm hoping is people who are in the middle of their careers or starting their careers, and that whole industry will understand that some of the most creative people out there, their brains aren't wired the same as everybody else, and the reason they're so creative is because their brains aren't wired the same, and they don't have the same, thought patterns. But if you support them in the times where they need emotional support and space, and then they'll also bloom as artists, as it were, as skateboarders. In that way, they'll be creative. I will go off and just rant on and on,
Good.
given the chance. So
That's great. To come back to you, Alex, from the work that you're doing now and the volunteering that you're doing, do you see similarities from the side of skateboard pressures for people to get to a certain place are the same across the board, or are there different triggers or different set of things that cause people to get to where they are?
Yeah, I think just before I go on, I think Liz should follow us up because she's qualified. Let's not
Go to
forget.
Liz
Let's
after,
not
yeah.
forget that I am. I'm untrained in terms of like my friend here, but there is training provided at the place I do this listening volunteer work. It's really about sitting with people, right? And you're trying to get to the kind of elephant in the room. The question in the air is, you're suicidal. What's that about? Tell me your experience. And you get a range of responses to that. People are in trouble with finances. People are grieving. People are having a relationship breakdown. People are unsatisfied in work. People are overworked, underworked. There's anything you want. People react in a multitude of ways, but for some people, and it's not an exclusive club, people have, I feel low. You can go lower than that. You can go as low as the point where you're phoning a charity, you're face to face with someone, and you're saying to them for the first time ever, admitting to yourself, which is arguably the hardest thing you can do, right? I want to kill myself. I don't want to live. That to me is like, it's pretty mind-blowing stuff being in a room with someone who's telling you that. So, it can be an entire range of reasons that people feel this way. It's not abnormal in any way, shape, or form. But Liz has probably got better words for that.
Not at all. I think you did a great job there. I suppose a common theme, if someone's feeling that that's becoming an option, is that you lose hope. And unfortunately, when pressure's on for whatever reason, you become more and more unable to problem solve. And you could become very isolated and disconnected. If you think about when you feel low, you start to withdraw, you're more unlikely to ask people for help. But thoughts of suicide and thoughts of not wanting to wake up the next day are very common. It's a very common human experience. And it doesn't mean that you're going to harm yourself in any way. So it's okay to talk about it, because there's going to be times when it all does feel too much. But the thing to hold in mind is that that generally passes, because things move on, things change all the time. I'm sure last year was probably quite a struggle for a lot of people here and people who watch this, but things have changed. And I suppose thinking about how we're wired, we're all wired to have these emotions. We don't choose them at all. They're just there. They're incorporated into our system. We don't ask for that. So it's being aware that that's part of the package. You can't not feel anxious. You can't not feel sad. You can't not feel angry. And that's all part of your threat system. So if you think about the fight, flight, freeze response, each of them correlates with each of those emotions. So fight being the anger, anxiety being the flight, and freeze being linked to sadness. So, it's not, there's nothing weird about feeling feelings. That's what you're wired to do. And your brain's wired to have thoughts linked to those feelings. And sometimes those thoughts get really dark. But you're not alone in that. That's a common human experience.
I've got so many notes here and lots of different things that you've brought up as well, Chris. And I go backwards and forwards between them all. It'll probably be a mess, but like to continue with that, like something that I wrote that came to me whilst watching both films is that there is a solve for anger and for happiness and things like that. You can physically do something, but sometimes it's not obvious what you can do for anxiety. So is there anything that you can give to us that's a way of coping with an anxiety or something like that? Because sometimes it's not very clear what it is that you need to do to deal with that anxiety.
Well, I suppose no one thing is going to, it depends. It obviously, we're all different. But if you think about that as a system, the threat system, and you think, well, if someone came to you feeling sad or anxious or angry, what would you say to them? You know, a really good friend or someone you really care about, would you say, oh, just get over it, like, you know, build a bridge? No, you'd probably show some compassion and some warmth and some kindness, and you dig deep and you think, what do I think this person needs to hear? And really that's what we should do for ourselves, but we all too often go in towards self-criticism, and we say, oh, why am I being so stupid about this? I should just know better. And, you know, I was anxious about coming here tonight and being filmed and all of this. So I had to use my own, you know, my own knowledge to think, okay, well, you know, I'm doing this for all the right reasons. I'm willing to feel anxious to do this. And I'm nervous right now, but it's important that I'm here. So sometimes anxiety, you'll take it with you, but you can breathe. And breathing is really, really powerful, you know. It's not just yogic talk. It soothes your system. So if you think about your fight, flight, freeze response, it's a hardwired physiological response. So the first thing you have some power over is your physiology. So if you change your breathing pattern and your body posture, then you start to be able to calm your own system down. And then you use that warm, gentle tone of voice with yourself. Because if you try and go the critical route, you'll activate your threat response again. So that's what I'd say.
Thank you. I will definitely consider a lot of that. Chris, you mentioned the performance anxiety. I'd like to sort of go between you and Adam and Alex about that whole pressure of performing. It's something you have to do. It's something that you've mostly probably put on yourself, because a lot of the time it's not like your sponsors or anyone are saying, hey, you have to get this photo, you have to get that. It's more in a US kind of thing, that. But you mentioned in the film you've spoken to this person on this day and now you're not going to sleep. What was it that was the main pressure on that? Was it because you could obviously perform, you had the minerals to do it. So what was it that was going through your head as a little bit more of an explanation to what you say in the film?
It's strange to put that into words. Skateboarding is difficult. We all know that's really hard for everybody. There's no, apart from a couple of guys who we let them have a pass, but most of us is really hard. And you know, if you think you're going to make a plan into the future, I'm going to do this trick on another day. That's kind of a big plan to go and do something scary, potentially dangerous. So I think there's an inbuilt anxiety there anyway, you know. But then my problem was when I involved someone else, it was taking up someone else's time, and I always felt responsible for someone else's time. I value time beyond anything else. It's our only true currency is our time. You know, it's the only thing we actually have to give away is our time, money or whatever, but actual time. So when I'm taking time away from someone else, I feel really responsible that I, would skate and perform on their time. You call up a film, that guy's he's got to get on a train or a bus or drive, and then he's got to make sure his equipment's good, and it would be like that. It's the added, it's like double responsibility of skateboarding for me. But and plus you're doing a potentially dangerous thing, and having to deal with security guards and stuff as well. So, and whatever else, the rain, or I don't know, do I need to take a spare board and all this crap if you're lucky enough to have one? And it was just compounded stress. It's part of it. Everybody does it. We're a bunch of us here, we're nervous about being up here. There's an anxiety in that performance. Every time, you take your driving test, that's, makes you anxious. With skateboarding, it's like you're involved in another person, so it kind of amplified it a little, I think. That's kind of what I was trying to get across.
And it's easy to focus on the negative things than it is the positive thing.
For sure.
Like we all find ourselves going, this is going to go wrong. Like I'll create massive amounts of scenarios that are never going to happen to be able to deal with when it goes wrong.
Yeah.
But most of the time it's fine.
Yeah, you build defense mechanisms in and be like, oh, well, if it goes badly, I kind of knew that was going to happen. And that doesn't help you. I don't know if that doesn't really help, so, but I get that.
So on the other side of the lens, or if you wanted to carry on, Adam, from that.
I was going to say, it's that inner critic, being so critical of yourself. Just to add to everyone else about being up here, like I am terrified of public speaking. It's my worst fear, and I'm. But the point is about skateboarding, about persevering as well. Is I'm trying to get past that because I know that I want to do things like this, and I want to talk to people like you, and I want to have these conversations about mental health, which is it's bigger than me, basically, is what I'm saying. So I think it's that inner critic of trying to be kinder to yourself. I built up all sorts of things about what was going to happen here. I didn't think about my mic was going to go wrong, so that was one extra one. But yeah, it's just being a bit kinder to yourself, and I can see how those things get built up, like Chris was saying about, like booking in a photographer or a filmer, and then that becoming such a big thing. And I think as well, like you visualize these things of how they're going to happen, and you can almost see that you're going to go out and do this trick or land this trick, and it's going to happen. But you've built up the other pressures of all the other things that are going to go wrong that I think override it. It's those positives, like trying to take away positives from that. But yeah, it's perseverance, I think, a lot of it. So,
yeah,
add to that.
No, I think it's interesting that you're saying it kind of overtakes, the negative overtakes the potential positive, right? And I'm sure you've been in a similar situation when we were talking about it down the road a minute ago, but often that kind of negative baggage that is added on, not that anyone's at fault with that, but if we accept that exists, this additional pressure that's kind of put on in spades by the skateboarder or the manager or the photographer or whoever it is doing that, that can have a real impact on the actual act of trying to create a photo or film a thing, and it can draw the fun out to the degree where everyone's left questioning, like, what are we doing here? And I think that can be a difficult thing to actually, it can be difficult to get over, And often I was saying to Adam, I can't remember many sessions where that tension, which I've never kind of experienced in any other photography work, that tension that's brought into a session where there's uncertainty or there's anxiety and there's kind of hesitancy and all these things, that has ever kind of really worked in the favor of certainly the photo being landed, which is, as we all know, that's kind of critical in the skateboard media world, allegedly. But so it's to the detriment. It's never spoken about. That's something else that me and Adam were kind of talking about as well. It's like, this exists, It's a fact. I've been at the bottom of a set of stairs and human urine, just waiting, going, I really don't want this person to be so upset, but this person's really upset. But we don't talk about it. You carry on hating it. I carry on hoping. It's a strange environment. But yeah, I think conversation around that, I think the reason I wanted to take photos, because I wasn't good enough at skateboarding, but the real kind of benefit for me was like, it's a collaboration. You're working with someone, which requires communication, but often that gets put by the wayside because there's a photo and it has to be lit this way and it has to be this technical and it has to be da-da-da-da. There's a list of things. But yeah, it's about communication, isn't it, with the person. You're doing it for a positive reason. That's what you go into it for. And often the kind of negative can cloud that, and you maybe lose sight of it. I'm not sure if that's useful. It's just anecdotal, maybe. Over to you, Mark.
Mark, one thing to add in there, that obviously those battles you have in skating, that when you actually do make the trick and get the photograph, they feel twice as good, 3 times as good, 10 times as good, because you've not only done the thing you said you were going to do, and you've achieved and you've created an amazing picture with a good, with an amazing photographer, and you've got a memento for all time and all that stuff, but you can use those as like little markers to be like, wow, I got through that day and I did that. Like, oh my God, I actually, So it's nice to have that as well, and not, obviously not everybody's in the position where they get to shoot photos and take that, but just to say there's some positivity in that. It's like, not only did you do the trick, which is difficult, and arrange the photographer, but you've fought the battle as well. So that's kind of why skateboarding's amazing too, because you've recorded that battle. And I've got photographs that look at me, oh my God, you wouldn't believe. Like, I threw up on the train on the way to do that. And I went there, I haven't really gone back and done too many things like that, but, I went there 3 times to do that. Or, yeah, that was and you've got some kind of a memento of those battles as well. So there's a positive side to that too. And there's always a backstory behind photos, and it's kind of nice. I think that's why we like those videos where it shows someone out on a photo shoot or someone, you see those battles. And the raw footage, you're like, wow, you really see the story of that. We can celebrate that, and it's like, oh yeah, it is hard for these guys, and they do like feel rough about it. But then when they get it, you can really celebrate it.
I think from some of my own experiences of going somewhere with even traveling to Oregon or something to go and do one photo, something that I wanted to go and do, and then when I got there, I was like, oh no, what have I done? Like, look at this thing, it's ginormous. I don't have the ability to do this thing. And I think sometimes you totally can do it, but you build up this picture, this fake situation that you cannot do it, and you focus on that. And when you actually do it, you've gone away with, you thought you couldn't do that, couldn't you? And you have this conversation with yourself, but the achievement that you walk away with is the photo, the sense of achievement of doing the trick, but also that I've fought the demon inside myself that was telling me I couldn't do it. I think that's kind of the special thing that skateboarders get, I think. And I don't know if anyone else has that kind of doubt in themselves, but I would always have that. And it would be, I'd lie to myself to say that I could do something or I couldn't do something, and it was that battle. With, say, okay, that didn't go to plan, what do I do now? Or it did go to plan, what do I do now? A lot of the times, that journey was to the pub. And you mentioned about drink, you touched on it a bit. And I think drink within skateboarding sometimes has this weird handshake, awkward handshake, but it's a thing. And I think it'd be nice to talk about, your experience with drink as well, Alex, and how, as well as you, Chris, how that would play a part in your skateboarding and in your routine.
Okay. Well, alcohol, there's all kinds of reasons people drink and become addicted to alcohol, whether they're, I've said in the film, I have quite an addictive personality, and I like to really, I'm going to use the word, I like to monster things when I do them. If I do something, I want to do it, like, till I break it almost to see how good it is, But alcohol and skateboarding is a kind of it's a double-edged sword, because it's a reward system as well. You make your trick, you go to the pub, or you don't make your trick, you go to the pub, like Mark said. You can't, if you can't skate for a little while, you end up drinking too much, which doesn't help your recovery either. We have more of a culture of it here than I think in places like the US as well. We drink a lot more here. Yeah, it's just I think alcohol affects people in different ways, and some people can take it or leave it and have a beer, and some people just need to have as many beers as they can drink until they can't drink any more beers, So, you can get to a point where you're trying to apply science to getting pissed. You'd be like, oh yeah, I'm going to see how drunk I can get and whether I can make it home today or tomorrow. But yeah, I'm the kind of person that wants to test things until they break. So that's where my thinking. I've done that with everything I've done, you know. So even skateboarding, with the talent I have, I've pushed that as hard as I can, you know, to see how good I can do it, you know. So you know.
Yeah, I'm not sure what I can add. If you were asking me to add, were you? Yeah, all right. Don't want to assume. You're about to say something. I don't want to cut you off.
It's just that prior we had a conversation.
We did, in the pub,
and we were
ironically.
talking about. Yeah, that was my fault.
Yeah.
I did offer to go somewhere else, but we were talking about like how. Leave it.
It wasn't one of those ones.
We were talking about like the pressures and all these different things within skateboarding, of going to events or being a bystander, having a drink. It's like a normal thing to stand there watching skateboarding, having a drink. And that you went to an event, had a different experience and weren't drinking and had a different kind of view of it.
Yeah, I mean, but without kind of focusing too much on a single experience, I think that was a catalyst experience for me, because it kind of changed my approach to why I was drinking, really. It was quite enlightening for me to kind of discover that myself. I mean, it wasn't just me in the end, but looking back on it now, it seems like it was quite crystal clear, but I didn't get the message. And hindsight's 20/20, as we all know. I think, yeah, the reason why you drink can be commiseration, can be celebration, can be all of these things. So I think, for me, certainly, what got lost in that process was the reason why I drank. I didn't have that anymore. I didn't have, I'm going to go out because I had a great day today. I shot a photo, you know. It was just, cool, I'm out here. It's permissible in skateboarding to be drinking in the street. It's fun, don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to be a killjoy, you know. I understand why I thought that. But after 20 years of that, it's kind of like, well, you know, I'm drinking because I'm drinking, you know. There's nothing deeper than that. It's a crisis point, it was for me, because I was kind of, well, I don't really know why I'm drinking, but I can't seem to stop drinking. Like, that's not a good situation to be in. Oh, well, I'll carry on drinking until I can figure that out, you know. And that kind of attitude carries on until you get to the point where you're like, you know, and I always kind of put this in a caveat of like, well, you know, I wasn't waking up with shit in my pants and wasn't pissing myself and didn't lose my job and all these things that we think, that's what alcoholics do, you know. You can actually do far worse things to yourself not getting that deep into it, you know, if you just can't stop doing it. For me, it was about trying to figure out the reason why. And there wasn't a reason anymore. And there was, at some point, it was fun. It helped me kind of socially lubricate. I could be myself, and then myself became absorbed into being half-cut, drinking in the day, carrying on drinking through the night, going home drinking again, waking up next day, skateboarding, I'll go and shoot a photo. Oh, I'm on a trip. Even worse when you're on a trip, because it's like party for 7 days, you know. I think being aware, if I could give my 18-year-old, 20-year-old self advice, would be just like think before you drink. You know, like, what are you doing this for? Is it fun with your friends? Great. That's probably a good use of your time to a degree. But if you're just doing it because you're doing it, then you need to maybe readdress things a little bit. It sounds a little bit kind of like I'm trying to tell everyone what to do. I'm not. But my experience of it, you know, and I think it can easily get a hold of you as well. That's something to be aware of, you know. I'm sure people are far more aware of it now than I was growing up, because it was everyone drank, and that was just the way it was. And now I think kids are a bit more switched on, but, you know, something to be aware of. Certainly if you're injured, you've got time down, you've got freedom to do it, then it can be a bit of a recipe for disaster.
I think sort of in some of my own experiences with skateboarding being so social and then suddenly getting dropped into a situation, it's very easy to have a drink and then be open or be able to start conversations or be able to talk to certainly your peers or heroes or things like that, and it can be easily used like that. And then that can be, if you have a social anxiety anyway or a social issue or find just big crowds and things an issue for you, it's very easy to use that as the stepping stone to getting to somewhere, but then that becomes addictive. And I think skateboarding being so social, it can cover up a lot of those issues within skateboarders.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think putting skateboarding in a kind of social bracket is probably more suitable than sport anyway. I mean, we're told to think that skateboarding is not a sport, right? But I think it is. It's about building relationships and having conversations with people as much as it is about the trick that's landed. You know, the actual aspect of skateboarding can be quite small in a successful day of skateboarding. You know, it can be about meeting people. And I think, but it's key to try and focus on the positives of that, the relationships you build, not necessarily how you got there, which could be socially, lubricated through alcohol or a joint or whatever it is that kind of floats your boat. But for me, the anxiety was flipped. You know, I used it to kind of allow myself to be social. And then turns out I required it to be social. So it'd be, I need to drink in order to be able to go to the event to enjoy myself where there'll be free drink. There's always free drink, right? There's another issue. That's probably another film. But so I think it's just, I don't want to come across as sanctimonious. That's not my intent at all. But for me anyway, it was about analyzing my relationship with it. It could have been anything, it didn't have to be alcohol. It just happens that that's the one that society says, go for it. Don't worry about it. It's on every corner. Doesn't kill you. Oh, wait, it does. It's really bad for you. But shh. Anyway, there's another
That sums it up quite well there. To go back to you, Chris, and some of the points that you made in the film, it'd be good to talk about, or earlier on we were talking about sort of a ranking within skateboarding that you create yourself, and then the toxic masculinity that then is within that. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Okay, we were talking about, obviously skateboarding is, when I started I'll go through that story. When I was a kid, when I started skating in Wales, everybody played rugby. It was sports. Everything was based on a meritocracy of how good you are. That's where you ranked as a man. It was that kind of very masculine hierarchy, and it was sport is very much like that. And when I went into skateboarding because I didn't like that. I didn't like that alpha male stuff. I wasn't one, so I was looking for it somewhere else. So I went into skateboarding. But when I got into skateboarding, I realized it also had rules and layers and cool guys. And I'm not going to attack the cool guys because I like some of the cool guys. But there were levels in it, and it still was a meritocracy of whether you were good or not. And less so than sports, but there was a little bit of that as well. And why were we talking about this again? What was the prompt?
The toxic masculinity.
Oh yeah. So obviously in the skateboarding, skateboarding back then was much more male focused, and that comes with that. The masculine world comes with those hierarchies because we're still somewhere, I think, back in our heads, we're quite tribal and we're looking for alpha males and things that don't serve us well anymore because we're not cavemen. We don't need that stuff anymore. As men, we don't need that structure. We just haven't figured out a way to organize ourselves that doesn't have that. But so we were talking about how that toxic masculinity that comes from performing as a male to fit in these hierarchies is just another version of masculinity, which we do. And then we were also talking about how skateboarding has become more diverse, and it's taking away some of that meritocracy in skating, that male side of things. And we were saying, I was thinking how healthy that is, that skateboarding it's not about how good you are, and it never has been. Like, so many people skate who aren't, there's a couple of guys who are pro skaters, but most people skate because they love it, and focusing on being good is not the goal, like you're good. You're only in skateboarding, I felt the only judge is yourself. If you achieve something, you can be, your friends, if you've got good friends, they'll support you, but you can pat yourself on the back. Be like, wow, I did something today I've never done before. It might have been like I did a kick turn on a slightly higher quarter pipe than I've done, or I did, I skated a bigger set of stairs, or I ground a longer rail. It's so incremental, and you can reward yourself in that. So, yeah, we were just thinking about how skateboarding can be quite toxic from a male point of view. Obviously, that's my perspective. I've grown up with it as in this form, as it were. So, where was I going with that? I lost track a little there.
Well, essentially, you said in the film, and excuse my French, it's bullshit.
Yeah, it is bullshit. We don't need that stuff anymore. We needed it when we were being chased by saber-tooth tigers, and we needed a strong dude who would, be able to rustle up a bunch of other slightly stronger or maybe bigger, stronger dudes who would save us and our women and our children from the, But we don't need that anymore. We don't. We as humans have evolved into a society where we're much safer. Okay, we're not as safe as we should be. We know that, but we have a society where we're getting closer to equality, and we don't. But a lot of men are still operating on that caveman level. They don't need it. It doesn't, like I said, it doesn't serve us well anymore. But we're lost because we don't have even, my dad, who's great, and our parents maybe haven't provided us as men with a new model of how to be that isn't back to the caveman thing of that guy's the best, follow him, he's the chief. Like, we don't need chiefs anymore. All the chiefs don't serve us well, we all know that too, right? So, yeah. That's kind of where I was coming at. We just, but there's still a lot of toxicity in skateboarding. It's got worse, and obviously, there are factors in skateboarding, especially the sport kind of end of skateboarding, which they use that as a model to sell us stuff. That the guy who's the best, the chief, you buy his shoes. You know what I mean? It's not always the best, coolest, most interesting guy. It's very often the guy who goes the highest, longest, furthest, spun around the most times, switch, or can. So there's still a little bit of that, and then it still prevails that being the best. And I think it's great. I think it's good to have someone to be the best because that pushes us all. But it's not the be all and end all of skateboarding, thankfully.
Did you feel that you shouldn't be feeling the way you felt because it wasn't masculine? Like you felt like? Did you feel like you're like, well, wait a minute, I'm a man. I shouldn't be feeling like this.
I felt, well, I never really felt that. I've always felt it was a bit strange. That's why I didn't like the rugby and the sports. I didn't fit into that. And it wasn't because I was pissed off I wasn't the alpha male or any of the males anywhere up and down that whole chain. I just seemed like a really odd way to structure. It always seemed wrong, but I never had the vocabulary or to kind of explain it to myself why it felt wrong. Now, as time has gone on, I've read more books and understood that, I think I was right. We don't need that stuff anymore. So it always felt wrong. And I've been in situations, I worked at Slam City Skates, which was accused of being quite cliquey, and it was quite cliquey. Maybe not as bad as it was before I got there, but it got better over time, hopefully. But we've all been involved in this industry, and we've evolved as people. I've evolved as a person, hopefully, and got better and more understanding, and have increased my vocabulary and done more reading. So I'm trying to improve. I'm going to be better than my dad. And my dad's great, right? Sorry, Dad. But, I'm going to be better than my parents, and I want my kid to be better than me. So I'm going to keep, we're going to keep passing that on. Everybody's going to, we're going to evolve mentally and become a better society, I guess. So that sounds like I'm going for a Nobel Prize, but I'm not. I'm just talking about skateboarding.
I don't want to cut you off.
I know. I think. Oh, sorry, Alex. I'm stealing your mic. Sorry, nothing.
No, I just borrowed this. No, it's working. Sorry. Do you see the kind of conversation around mental health within skateboarding as antithetical to that kind of hierarchy, the masculine hierarchy we're talking about, where there's a kind of like a tough guy exterior. This is how it's done. Watch me. I've got this. You know, hold my beer. I'm going to do this. I mean, we're talking about mental health, right? Which is traditionally the opposite. So, I mean, where do you see it sitting?
Is it taboo in skateboarding?
I would say taboo is probably a good word to use, yeah.
Like, you know, it could be, like I think I mentioned, it's, you know, you can't bring it up because it's seen as not marketable. There's a little bit of that, not being marketable in skating because of, you know, you're not strong, or you're not like Alex said, you know, hold my beer, I'm gonna jam this blunt slide down this huge hubba, you know what I mean? So, yeah, we're not encouraged to talk about our mental health because of that. It is the antithesis of what we do, you know. But I think we need to opening this dialogue up and doing this, just doing this alone. Like all of you guys coming to hear us talk and input with this. We're talking, you know. Talking is the first step. And that alone, we've all just made a difference just today, you know, and these guys are making a difference with all these films, you know. So every time we do this, we're taking another step to opening a dialogue, normalizing talking about our brains and how we feel, and when we don't feel safe, and feeling good about that stuff. So I think we're in a state of flux, as we are in lots of things in society. We're in a state of flux. But you know, we have all today contributed towards a step in the right direction, as it were. You know.
Can I just ask a question? So we're going to kickstart the Q&A so the audience can kind of ask some questions as well. It's mainly for Alex and Adam. I know when Ben was going on skate trips and towards the end, he was really struggling with the pressure of performing in front of people, being, you know, taken to a spot and having to land a trick and things. From your side of things, how have you been in a situation where you've seen, like, say, Ben, you guys obviously shot Ben and stuff, struggling? Was it difficult trying to have that conversation because you know you were there for him to land a trick, or say not just Ben, anyone? Like, how have you been, I suppose, how have you managed those situations before when you can see someone kind of struggling? Do you feel like now it's more of an open conversation to have, or before it was quite difficult to, if you know what I mean?
You want to go first?
Yeah, I think, in my experience, before it was difficult. I don't know, if it is easier now. I hope it is easier now. But like Alex says about having the conversations, a lot of time everyone, like the relationship you're in, like the filmer and then the person skating, you knew stuff that was going on, each of you did, but you weren't connecting and actually having a conversation about that, either at the time, before it, which would be helpful, so you weren't anxious going into it, or even afterwards. It was then just, like we're saying, like go for a beer, or we could focus on something else more fun and not really do it, and then it just gets passed on, and then, you know, that repeats the next day because everyone's trying to get on a trip, everyone's trying to get as much as they can done in that week, and everyone wants, in my experience, to get the most footage, get the most photos, you know, to really maximise on it, and sponsors obviously sending you out on trips, that extra pressure as well. So I hope that is changed now. I don't know. I haven't been in that environment for a while.
Yeah, I feel like it definitely.
Yeah, I think. Is it still working? I can't tell. I think, my experience really parallels what Adam's talking about. I think it was never. I didn't have the tools. Probably still don't. Like, I'm not qualified to, but I feel like I've got a handle on my experiences, more broadly other people's mental health experiences, to be at least able to kind of identify maybe that there's something more going on. I think I was quite, as a photographer, I'd be like, okay, we're here to do a thing, we try and do it, doesn't work, this person's upset, they're angry. Like, often you don't get the chance to then sit down and talk about, like, hey, what's going on today? You seem really out of sorts. Like, those kind of conversations did not seem to happen. I feel like now I would have more kind of ability or more kind of sense to maybe sit down and have the awkward conversation. I think that's where it really is really about talking to people. It's a very simple thing to say. It's just about communication, but it is. If you're not talking to someone you don't know, the worst thing you can do is to sit and say nothing in a situation you think is a bit strange. If someone's been racist, you can speak about it. Someone's like being a dick to women. You can speak about it. It's terrifying, but you got to do it, right? If someone's having an emotional breakdown on a set of stairs, it might not be that they just can't do the trick. It might be that there's something else going on. So you have the conversation, because, you know, like in Ben's case, we can't have those conversations now. It's too late at that point. So do it. That'd be my advice. Sound a bit like Kermit the Frog there.
Yeah.
So is anybody else in the audience wants to ask any questions from the panel?
Come on, someone.
Come on.
Hi, I hope everyone's all right. My name's Slim. I came late, so I literally missed the video, but I'll watch it on YouTube later. So I wanted to ask, what do we think about companies that use alcohol to market their products? So, like collaborations that we would never wear otherwise, but because they are with a skate brand, we choose to wear them. Do we think we should discourage these kind of collabs in the future? That's my question.
Tumbleweed? Go for it.
I think I know you're talking about, Slim. See, the thing is, alcohol is fine. It's another drug that we can all use in moderation, you know, so if you can, you know, drink responsibly is the thing, and if you market responsibly, obviously, when we're talking about marketing and skateboarding, you're marketing to a massive demographic from, you know, little kids who are getting normalized with seeing a Stella logo, you know, they see that skateboarding, you know, so I think there's a responsibility in there too, but there's that responsibility comes from our parents maybe and the other people around us to spread awareness that, you know, drugs and drink they're part of the human experience, and being able to do them in moderation and experience everything in life once maybe, and keeping an eye out for the people who maybe are, you know, can be addicts, you know. So I see where you're coming from. We're romanticizing those things, and there's a danger in that, and I see where you're coming from with that, you know. But I think they're intrinsically part of our culture as human beings as well. So it's how do we do that responsibly? But it's a good question. I think there's a responsibility in it. So. Yeah, it's kind of fun, you know. Those things have been fun as well, you know. But and someone who doesn't really drink anymore, I can see the humor in it. But like I said, there's a responsibility there. I don't want to come down too hard on it, because drinking is part of our culture, same as drugs can be. And you know, I believe everybody should be free to do whatever they need to do to get them through the day, whether that's. Well, I'm not going to go down that route because we start philosophizing, but yeah, just things with a responsibility and a conversation around them as well, you know, not necessarily a sticker, a disclaimer, but you know, there's a responsibility. So yeah.
Can I just add something? I think that's the kind of question I've been able to ask myself since not kind of drowning myself in drink, but. I think there's a responsibility, but there's also this. It's kind of a pull and a push with skateboarding, because it's like fuck the system, but then it's like when you grow up and you act a bit more responsibly, you actually need to consider like hang on a minute, what are we doing here? You know, so I'm a yes and a no. I think they should be allowed to do whatever the fuck they want, because that's skateboarding spirit. But why do we have to be like negative about it? You can still have that attitude, and it can be a positive thing, you know. I think it's a dangerous thing when that, like, fuck everything attitude becomes, like, self-annihilation and, like, we're no good, basically. That kind of attitude seeps through to children especially, and to young people, right? So we've got to, you know, life, I'm not going to say life is sacred, but it's pretty fucking special. If you've got it, to kind of ignore the fact that you can do something positive with it seems a bit of a travesty. Maybe a bit deep, but yes and no, Slim.
I actually think that a lot of the companies within skateboarding should have a responsibility of looking after their riders past ending of pro, or watching how they're spiraling downhill with drink and things like that, and they should have more of an actionable response to these things instead of you're off the team, Steve, let's go. And I think skateboarders shouldn't be so replaceable so easily, and they should be supported more after skateboarding, 100%, I think. Any other questions? Over there?
To be fair, my question sort of follows on from that. Like, so for a lot of skateboarders during their career, they're obviously like spending a lot of time crafting what they're doing. A lot of them don't end up with skills to actually, you know, make it in the real world, I suppose. So for a lot of skateboarders, is it a sort of like a, what do I do next once skateboarding stops? I mean, it's a pretty physical thing. We can't do it forever. So yeah, does anyone have any experience with that, you know?
Sorry, Chris.
That was another thing we were talking about earlier. Like, what do you do at the end when you get turfed out of skateboarding? There's only so many roles as team manager or working selling shoes, which I did for years and years. There are only so many of those roles going. You know, you may be, you know, move into photography or art or. But there is a certain point where, you know, the skateboard industry, yeah, it's an industry, and skateboarders are employees, you know, to some degree. But I think as a community, we're better than just saying, well, you know, you don't work for us anymore, we don't care, you know. Like, I think we've got more of a, we have like an ongoing responsibility as well. You know, a lot of these people, a lot of skateboarders, they give us a lot of entertainment. You know, they inspire us, or they give us entertainment. I think as a community, we kind of need to show them an ongoing kind of care, and you know, we all work together. You know, Marc was speaking about this earlier. You know, I don't know, like someone wants to buy me like or find me like a nice allotment and put me out to pasture. I'm good. I'm nearly there, you know. So that'll keep me happy. I won't bother you guys ever again after that. Okay, so. But.
I mean, this is a conversation that I spent a lot of time talking with Ben about. Actually, he was always kind of searching for something to do because, you know, I mean, he's an insanely talented skateboarder that's basically been immersed in it since he was, God knows how young, 12 or something. I mean, what do you do in that situation if that's your entire life experience? Like, you know, I mean, personally, I went back to university 3 years ago at the age of 39, which is, I didn't think I was going to do at the age of 38, you know, never mind like the rest of my life before. But that's a huge decision, you know, I had left a lot behind to do that. I was fortunate enough that my wife could support the house while I could do that, you know, but that's not the case for the majority of people, and I'm well aware of that, how lucky I've been with that. So yeah, I agree. It comes back to the point you were making. It's about support, you know, it's about the support of the individual, skateboarding or not. I mean, society's got a lot to answer for more broadly, you know. People are left hanging. You come out of education, what have you got? You come out of skateboarding, what have you got? It's the same kind of scenario, right? And that's totally tied in with poor mental health, you know. The anxiety around not knowing, that can persist, like, no matter what's going on. You could have, you know, birthday parties, weddings, bar mitzvahs, whatever. If you're feeling anxious about your future, existential dread, it's pretty kind of all-consuming, I would say. So, yeah, I don't know how we solve it, but I think it's an important thing to be on the radar, you know, along with everything else we're talking about.
I think that's in general with anything that you focus on. If you focus on one thing, when that one thing ends, it's like, well, I've lost my identity, I've lost what I do, who I am, and things. And I had a very similar conversation with Ben as well, where he was like, I kind of not sure if I want to do this anymore, but I don't have anything else to do. So I kind of, this is what I'm good at, I'll stay doing this even though I'm not particularly happy doing it. And it's almost that entrapment, I guess, of, well, what else am I going to do? And it's you can go back to university at any point you want, and well done for you pursuing that. Like, but it's a big deal. I do, I definitely do, because a lot of people would just go, you know what, this is what I do, this is my identity, I'll carry on doing it, and I'm happy to be unhappy about it. And it takes a lot to realise in yourself, you know what, this isn't my thing, this isn't what I'm about, this isn't my only identity, I want to do other things.
Can I just add to that? There's a lot tied up in skateboarders' identity with skateboarding. Yeah, I mean, we know that people do other things within skateboarding. People turn wood, or they, sell wood, or whatever. There's plenty of jobs outside of wood, but there are these things that experiences that you develop over time. You learn that, hang on a minute, skateboarding is not the only thing. We love it, but it's good to have a few other things in your life that you can at least try and get inspired by, or get good at, or enjoy, or learn from. It doesn't have to be something massive. It can be little things. Take the time you've got when you're not skateboarding to develop other interests. That would be I wish I'd heard that advice not from me, I wouldn't listened, but as someone in the past, earlier, then I would be doing something and skateboarding, a lot more kind of like smoothly. Right now, it's kind of like, okay, I've had to stop that, I start this. But, and certainly if you end a professional skateboard career or something, I imagine, because I don't have the experience, but if you just stop that, the rug from underneath your feet, yeah, that can't be good for you, I don't think.
Yeah, I'd also like to add that, from my personal experience as well, through skateboarding, it was my bubble for, so many years. Like I helped co-ran a skateboard company as well, and that became my everything. And I think there's a bit of a danger in skateboarding becoming your addiction as well, and that's all you do, and you don't see a wider view of things. And I remember coming out of the industry, so to speak, and thinking I was fucked. I just didn't think I had any transferable skills whatsoever. And it was only after speaking to friends that you realise all these things you've done, and the people you've been with, and the trips you've been on, and the things you've done, who you've hung out with. There's a lot more to it, that you have transferable skills and these creativity that you have being a skateboarder. There's much more to it. And I was going to say that, there needs to be support, I think, for that, to be able to highlight these transferable skills so you don't feel like you're going down a spiral, a downward spiral, because you've got nothing after that. So, hopefully things will change.
So get a backup plan. Have something else that you can go to as well. Anyone else? There was someone over this side, maybe.
Hello, testing. What's up? It was you made me think earlier when you were saying about working with skaters and seeing them freak out. And then you're like, how do you have that conversation afterwards? And I'd be also really interested if there's like a therapeutic, proven way on this as well. Like, basically, if someone doesn't believe they need professional help, if they're like dead certain professional help doesn't work for them, how do you approach that? Because obviously, you talk about it, that's one thing, but that's quite a confrontational thing. It's really stigmatized. And is there any kind of proven softer approaches, to kind of bring it up with someone who believes that professional help doesn't help them? It's kind of roughly what I was getting at. I don't know.
I think that's probably too tricky for me to answer.
Liz? Maybe Liz.
Yeah, Liz.
It's a really good question, because I have friends who will say, oh, well, what's talking to someone going to do to help me? And I'm like, you're kind of offending me right now. That's my whole career. So I think about what you find helpful. Any resources online you can send someone is a nice start. It's difficult, isn't it? Because if someone really isn't open to it, they're not going to look. They're not going to read it. They're not going to step forward. And it is hard speaking to someone, because what to expect? It's so strange if you've never done therapy before. What can you imagine you'd even speak about, or how would it help? Because I talk to my friends. What's the difference? So it is very difficult to describe to people how it is different and how it can be helpful. But they're very different conversations. And it's so nice to have somebody neutral to speak with, who's not biased in any way, and is there to be helpful to you, and who can guide you to your own wisdom. I've put down a couple of links that I find really helpful, that I suggest. So I'm a big fan of compassion-focused therapy because it addresses that tendency we all have to be self-critical, whereas cognitive behavioral therapy, which is very popular, people can try and use it and then feel it's not really helping and then give up on therapy altogether. So the difference being that when you use cognitive behavioral therapy techniques, but you speak to yourself in a critical way, you're still going to feel pretty crap. So you might be able to get outside and go and meet your friends and start to activate again, but you still might feel really low and really worthless because the way in which you're speaking to yourself hasn't changed. So I'd recommend Paul Gilbert has put up a whole set of videos online last year, and I hand that out like lollipops, just go look at this. And if so that's 15 videos, and if you want a taster session, he has a nice online talk with Action for Happiness. It's like an introduction to compassion-focused therapy. It's him speaking on stage for an hour just to describe the model. So I generally talk about that and what I find helpful. I use my own experience of what it's like, what you might talk about, what it's not like. Because I think, those conversations could be helpful for anyone. It doesn't have to be somebody in dire need that can benefit from therapy. It's just, you go and have those conversations, you build awareness, you find out how things in your life have influenced the way you see the world and the way you perceive the actions of others, and how you'd like to be more helpful to yourself and more helpful to others. So anyone can benefit from that. You don't have to be seriously depressed or anxious or any of those things. And even if you're going through a relationship breakup, it can be really helpful to speak to someone who's not a friend, because everybody's got different opinions that aren't necessarily helpful.
Just add a bit of personal experience, I suppose. I'm kind of one of these people, by the way. Historically, I was kind of like, therapy, whatever, I don't need that. And I had small experience of being in therapy, and I still thought, this isn't going to help me, But I think it did, and I don't think I was open to actually accepting that it could. Since doing this listening volunteer work, which is really just sitting in a room with someone we do 7 sessions over 3 months, and the only job I've got in there is to listen. So I'm doing nothing apart from asking someone, are you feeling suicidal? And talking about that. That's the one thing that I'm kind of obliged to do within this kind of therapy hour that I do with these people. So I'm literally sitting here like this. Okay. And I'm asking them what they're telling me. Am I getting this right? Am I clarifying this? So that's as little as I'm doing, and people can come in and seriously, suicidal states of mind, and they can get better. Now, that to me is pretty magical. I'm not suggesting that I'm somehow kind of responsible for that. It's about listening, right? So the therapy side of it is one aspect of it, but listening, non-judgmentally, that's really powerful. So I'm not suggesting you can get that across to someone who doesn't want to understand why therapy might be beneficial. And I'm sure therapy goes beyond that, but as a kind of gateway into it, listening. So if someone says, I don't need therapy, it's bullshit, you can ask them. You can say, would you like to just talk to me about it? I don't know. Would that be helpful to you? What is it you don't like about it? You can just have a conversation, and maybe that's a gateway to kind of them talking themselves around. You'd be surprised how once things come out of someone's mouth, that's it. It's in the room, it's real. And then they can kind of address it. That's my experience anyway, as unprofessional as it is.
And I'd always often say to people, give it a go and see what it's like, because you can self-refer online these days, if you're in the UK, to your local talking therapies. And a lot of it's down to the therapist as well, if you get on well with the therapist. So I'd always say, just give it a go. You've nothing to lose, apart from a bit of time maybe, but interesting, if nothing else, just to see what it's like. So yeah.
Brilliant. My head's buzzing. There's so much interesting stuff going on. I'm trying to pick it apart. But I'm really fascinated by this relationship between skateboarder and photographer, particularly as we're talking about therapy. And I'm kind of equating the two in a funny sort of way. And the photographer seems to offer a mirror. But all we get reflected back is our own ego. Whereas the therapist has a different kind of role. And you've talked about, or Alex talked about, being there as a photographer and having to almost be a therapist perhaps at various points. I don't know really where I'm going with it at the moment, but there seems to be something fascinating about that.
Yeah, I think I wish I could have been a therapist, to be honest, in those scenarios, and I don't think I was. But I think it's interesting you're saying about the kind of reflection of the ego, as in this person's there to do their thing. Here you are, blah blah blah, and flashing lights. But I think the relationship's a bit more. It's reciprocal, you know. A photographer gets something out of it. A skateboarder gets something out of it. The individual reading the magazine gets something out of it. The advertiser who sponsors the skateboarder gets something out of it. Everyone's benefiting from this relationship. But I think often there's bits that aren't kind of discussed within that.
I was very conscious when Chris was talking about that anxiety of going to perform and to have to do that thing, almost as if the photographer takes something away of you in a kind of anthropological way. People have been worried about the idea of photography taking away part of the soul in a kind of funny sort of way.
That's more to do with, I think, the actual skateboarding as a pure thing, because I skated so much on my own as a kid, and my reward for skateboarding was my own joy, and that was it. And then to go skateboarding and take photographs and to film it, to me is like, then I'm performing skateboarding rather than doing skateboarding. Especially if you go and film a line of tricks. I'm going to do 3 tricks in a row. That means I'm going to do the trick on this. I'm going to do a manual roll. I'm going to do a flat ground trick, and I'm going to do Smith frontside 360 out on this. Of course I am, right? But no, but you know what I mean. So, but at that point, then you've choreographed it, which some people think is totally natural in skateboarding. To me, that's not freestyling it. But in order to take skateboarding and present it to someone else, you have to choreograph it to film it, you know. That's part of the art form. To me, it's not the most attractive part of it, and to some people, that's all of it, you know. But that's a little bit what I was talking about, why it takes it away. It takes away the spontaneity of it more than anything. It doesn't ruin it, because it's amazing. You still got 3 tricks in a row or an amazing photograph. You know, it still exists. But it's not the spontaneous skateboarding that I get when I'm out wiggling around and, you know, Phil is filming me dad cam from the side, and that's me skateboarding. That's me. That's why I'm smiling, because that's what skateboarding is. And I'm maybe not doing many tricks, and I'm wiggling and falling off, but that's the real skateboarding, you know. But then when it comes to photographers, and if I haven't shot photos with Alex, but I've shot photos with Wig Whirland, and I've shot photos with Leo Sharp and Sam Ashley, and every single one of those photographers and filmers like our friend Chris Massey, who isn't with us anymore, every single one of those people massaged my ego because I was so self-deprecating. It wasn't stopping me from doing it. Don't get me wrong, everything I did was mostly despite myself. But those guys, every single one was like, it'll be okay, just take your time. I'm like, it's okay, I've got plenty of film. You know, it's a digital camera these days. You can go all day. I can just put this thing on a tripod and walk off. You know what I mean? So, but so every single one of those photographers, in a weird way, was kind of a therapy. They enabled the thing to happen. They all helped me. I'm thankful for all of those photographers, the ones that pushed me, the ones who did chase me to go skate. So there's that side of it as well. I think they, in a weird way, they were therapeutic in a way. They helped the thing happen, and it wasn't just because they were going to get paid for, you know, especially not taking photos of me, you know. So, but yeah. Does that answer that? Okay. Nice to see you.
This is the last one. No pressure. Mine was, it's just about like the ego thing for Ben. So everyone from ever since he was young said, you're the best. Do you think he had to then think about that and be like, everyone's telling me I'm the best. I've got this dude saying I'm the best, this dude saying I'm the best. And then him waking up and being like, am I really the best? Like, do you not think that's a hard thing? Like, if you're, I don't know, for a rev I'm being like, come on then, let's go. And you being like, fuck. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, do you not think that's a really hard thing to do on the self-ego point of the questions?
Yeah, I think that was a huge part to play in his mental health, having the pressures of having this, huge, people expecting so much of him everywhere he went. And he had a really bad anxiety, and then he would drink to kind of help numb that, I suppose. And then he'd turn up to skate parks, and sometimes he'd just want to skate, and yet he'd have people there like, oh my God, it's Ben Raemers. And then he just would go in on himself and then drink more. And so I think that had a huge part to it. I think when he got so big, he fell out of love with it. But then, like the guy said, didn't really know where to go after that. But yeah, that definitely, I think the pressures of skateboarding. And because you're performing as well, it's kind of like, I suppose, any art, when you're performing, like I was crapping it to stand up here and just say, hi, yeah, welcome to this, thanks. So you can imagine, how I guess they must all feel. And yeah. So yeah, I think that was a huge part of it.
I think Ben was not alone in that. I think that's a fairly common, I guess people don't get into skateboarding to perform skate tricks in a kind of skate park in front of 300 people, like you're saying. You're in a car park on your own, learning to do it, going, hey, no one saw it, but I did it, That's why you get into skateboarding, right? And then all of a sudden someone goes like, hey, you're a good kid, have a skateboard. Have another one. Come on this trip. Come on this trip, do this demo. And, at that point, you're kind of like, it must be good because people are taking interest in me. But no one's kind of supporting that with, but it doesn't really matter if you don't land it. That's like the secret of it, right? There might be one or two disillusioned kids if like the guy turning up to the demo doesn't absolutely destroy the place. But there's people that can turn up to a demo and they can do one trick. And that's folklore for 20 years later. And it doesn't matter, that they did one trick. It's like, that's the one that people remember for good reason, because they did it with passion and style and kind of grace in a way, It's like, they didn't go like, I'm going to do this, Certainly in English and Scottish and Irish and Welsh culture, it's very much like, yeah, okay. When someone comes into a room and goes like, check this out, it's kind of natural for everyone to go, yeah, okay, I'm not going to look. But, so it's that kind of, it goes back to the kind of misfit. It goes back to the individual, the uniqueness, so that the kind of thing that I feel like skateboarding provides an opportunity for it to develop. It's like you can pick it up. You don't have a rule book, although there's a rule book, but there's no rules, right? You have the skateboard. You don't need a photographer or a filmer or any of that stuff to do it. But you can have that as well, but you don't need it to do it. It's about that kind of, there's a gap within skateboarding for the unique individual who is doing it because they love doing it, and it shines through all the other stuff, I think.
I think that the ego is something that you have to rely on sometimes, though, to do something. You need to go, I am capable of doing this, and someone telling you are, like a photographer, come on, mate, you got this is easy, to you. And then you say to yourself, yeah, okay, yeah, I've done similar stuff like this before. And I think that ego that you're talking about, like that someone's bigged up, can be your best and worst enemy, definitely. And I think it's easy to get carried away in certain situations to where it gets to being a problem, for sure.
We're really sorry to cut you off. But I think that note that you just mentioned, Alex, about everyone is an individual, everyone's on a skateboard just being themselves, I just think that's a beautiful line to close on. There's been some amazing conversations here today, amazing questions. You guys have been the most incredible panel. Thank you from the bottom of our heart, from the Ben Raemers Foundation. Chris, for your film and your story, sharing your journey, and other Chris as well, who's not here tonight. But thank you for coming. Thank you for opening up. Please carry on these conversations with your friends, family, loved ones. And thank you for everything for supporting the Ben Raemers Foundation. There'll be more events. It's great to have you all back in person. So see you again soon.